I always knew that my place in the family was secondary. It wasn't something that was ever explicitly said, but it was something I felt in the air every day, in the way the world moved around me. Growing up, I was the responsible one, the one who understood everything, the one who quietly supported my younger sister Lily through all of her ups and downs. Lily, on the other hand, was the shining star. Every little thing she did seemed to draw attention, and every one of her achievements was celebrated like it was some sort of miracle. Lily was smart, charming, and incredibly talented. I was none of those things. At least I didn't think I was. I was the quieter, more reserved sister. The one who could get good grades and make things happen without much fuss, but I never seemed to be the one who mattered. It was always about Lily. From the moment she was born, the spotlight never left her. She was always the one whose successes were met with applause and celebration, while mine were acknowledged with a casual nod at best. "Good job, honey," my mom would say when I made the honor roll. But when Lily brought home a medal for some competition or finished a college project with a glowing recommendation, it felt like the whole world was cheering for her. At first, I didn't mind. I thought it was normal, a part of growing up in a big family where everyone has their own place. But as the years went by, the reality of my position began to sink in deeper. Every birthday was another reminder of how Lily was the center of attention. Every family dinner became a monologue of her latest achievement, whether it was a new award she'd won, a new milestone she'd reached, or a new dream she was chasing. I was always the background character in her story. My victories, though they existed, were small and unimportant in comparison. There were no grand celebrations for me, no surprises, no special dinners or "we're so proud of you" moments. When I did something worth celebrating, it felt like I had to whisper it into the void, hoping someone would hear it. Most of the time, I didn't even tell anyone. I learned to celebrate my achievements quietly, in my own way, without expecting anyone to notice. I was the reliable one, the one who always understood, who always did what was expected, and who never made waves. That was my role. And so I became the invisible one. I remember the first time I realized just how deeply ingrained this dynamic was. It was my high school graduation. I had worked hard for 4 years, putting in the extra hours, studying late into the night. My parents weren't there, but they were always busy, and I didn't mind. Lily had just returned home from a week-long trip, and I knew they would rather celebrate her arrival. They'd barely managed to get the dinner ready for me when I came back home. "You're amazing, sweetheart," my mom said, barely lifting her gaze from the stove. I tried to brush it off, but deep inside it stung. I couldn't put it into words back then, but there was a quiet resentment building within me. Every time they would praise Lily, my heart would sink just a little. There were moments when I thought, what about me? What about my hard work? Does it not matter? But I never said it out loud. I never dared. I didn't want to seem like I was complaining about the life I had, especially when Lily was the one who had it all. She had everything: the accolades, the praise, the love. As the years went on, I found myself becoming more and more accustomed to living in the shadow of my younger sister. I quietly carried on, building a life of my own, becoming the dependable one. I built my career as an event planner, pouring all my energy into creating beautiful moments for others. It was almost as if I was living through their happiness, because I had learned not to expect my own. My job gave me a sense of purpose, a feeling of fulfillment. When I created these grand celebrations for others, I found joy in knowing I could make them feel special. But in my own life, no one was making me feel that way. It was a strange dichotomy, being the architect of others' perfect moments while my own moments felt dull and unnoticed. My work became my escape. I threw myself into it, and I became successful. Clients loved my creativity and attention to detail, and I was quickly gaining recognition in my industry. But even then, when I shared the news with my family, it was always met with indifference. "That's great, dear," my dad would say, but the conversation would quickly shift back to Lily. She was still finding herself, as my mom put it. After changing majors a few times, she had finally found something that she loved, but she was still in the process of figuring it out. It seemed like she would always be the one everyone rallied around, the one everyone cared about. I, on the other hand, was expected to be fine on my own, to handle things like I always had. That was when I met Daniel. Daniel wasn't like anyone I had ever met before. He came to me as a client, seeking help for a charity gala for his pediatric practice. Our first meeting was an absolute mess. He showed up late, frazzled from an emergency surgery. I could tell he felt embarrassed about being late, but his warmth was undeniable. He was real, and there was something so incredibly genuine about him. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to play a role or hide my true self. As we discussed the details of the event, we ended up talking about our lives. I told him about growing up in the shadow of my sister, about how I had always been the one to step aside, to let Lily have the spotlight. "I know what that feels like," Daniel said quietly, his voice soft but full of understanding. "It sounds lonely. Always being the one who understands, who gives way." His words pierced through me, and I realized that for the first time in my life, someone understood. No one had ever put it into words like that before. For years, I had buried those feelings, telling myself they didn't matter. But they did. I had spent my life giving way to others, assuming that my happiness didn't matter as much. I had learned to live without the things I wanted, without the recognition I deserved. But in that moment, I realized I was tired of it. I was tired of living in the background, of being the one who understood everyone else's needs but never had my own understood. Daniel and I began dating soon after that. The more time I spent with him, the more I realized how deeply I had been suppressing my own desires, my own dreams. He celebrated me for who I was. No pretenses, no expectations. He saw me and not the version of me I had learned to show the world. He saw my potential, my heart, and my strength. For the first time, I felt like I mattered. Not because I was someone's support system, not because I was someone's reliable daughter, but because I was me. And that was when it hit me. I had spent my entire life living in the shadow of someone else. I had always been the one who understood, the one who gave way. But now, I was finally learning that I deserved to be seen. I deserved to have my own dreams, my own moment. And it wasn't just about me anymore. It was about finally stepping into the life I had always wanted. When Daniel proposed to me, I knew it was the beginning of something new. It wasn't just a proposal. It was a statement. A statement that I, too, was worthy of celebration. That I, too, deserved to be the center of attention on one of the most important days of my life. And I was determined that nothing, not even my family's indifference, would stand in the way of that. The decision came like a slap in the face. I had spent months planning every detail of my wedding, carefully crafting what I hoped would be the most unforgettable day of my life. And yet, my family couldn't even be bothered to acknowledge it. My wedding was scheduled for May 20th, a beautiful Saturday afternoon. It was a date I'd chosen with such care. Perfect for a garden ceremony, the kind of day I had always dreamed of. But when I casually mentioned the date at dinner one evening, my parents' faces told me everything I needed to know. They didn't even try to hide their hesitation. "Oh, honey, that's the same weekend as Lily's graduation," my mom said, her voice flat, the same tone she used when we discussed trivial matters. There was no excitement, no happiness for me, just the weight of an obligation. I could feel the pit in my stomach growing as the words sank in. I'd been hoping, praying even, that this time things would be different. That this time my family would show up for me. But instead, Lily's graduation, her long-awaited moment after years of changing majors, was once again the priority. It wasn't even a question for them. Lily's day came first. "Well, but my wedding is at 4 p.m., I stammered, trying to sound reasonable, trying to make it clear that they could easily attend both events. "The graduation is in the morning. You can still be there for that." But my mom, without missing a beat, dismissed my suggestion. "We can't possibly make it back in time. Kate, this is a huge moment for Lily. You understand, don't you?" I looked at my father for some support, some sign that he cared, but he just shook his head. "Lily needs us. She's worked so hard for this. You understand, don't you, Olivia?" It was like the air had been sucked out of the room. I wanted to scream, to stand up and tell them how hurt I was, but I couldn't. I never could. I had spent so many years being the good daughter, the one who never made waves, the one who understood, the one who always took a step back. And yet, every time I did, I ended up disappearing further into the background. It wasn't just the wedding. It was everything leading up to this moment. For as long as I could remember, I had always been the one to adjust, the one to compromise. I made peace with the fact that I was never going to be the star. I accepted that Lily's life was more important in the eyes of my parents. I had learned to live in the shadows. But this was too much. This was my day, my moment. And yet, my parents were telling me they couldn't be bothered to attend. I stood up from the dinner table, feeling a mix of anger and heartache rising within me. "I understand, of course," I said, the words barely leaving my mouth. My voice was small, thin. My chest felt tight. But deep down, I was seething. They didn't deserve me. They never did. They had spent years treating me as though my needs didn't matter, as if my accomplishments were only to be tolerated, never celebrated. And now they were doing it again. Daniel could see it in my eyes when I got home that night. He knew before I even spoke. I had always kept my frustrations with my family close to my chest, but with him, I didn't have to hide it. He pulled me into his arms and simply said, "They don't deserve you, Olivia." And I realized, for the first time in my life, that he was right. I didn't have to keep sacrificing myself for their happiness. I didn't have to keep stepping aside and pretending that everything was fine when it wasn't. This was my wedding, my special day. And if my parents couldn't be there for me, then fine. I would make it so spectacular, so unforgettable, that they would regret their decision for the rest of their lives. I had always been the one to make things perfect for others, to design beautiful events, to create memories that would last a lifetime for everyone around me. Now, it was time to create something for myself. I was going to show them that I could make my day as perfect as any other event I had ever planned. But this time, it would be my day, my moment. I started by contacting every single vendor I knew. My years of experience in the event planning world had given me access to some of the best people in the business. If anyone could make my wedding a dream come true, it was these people. I called Marco, the city's best florist. "I'm planning my wedding, Marco," I said, the words tasting strange on my tongue. "And it's not just any wedding. It's a wedding that's going to make my family regret not showing up." I could hear Marco's grin through the phone. "Tell me what you want, Olivia," he said. "We'll make it happen." And so it began. The plan to create the most magnificent wedding I could possibly imagine. Every detail would be perfect. The flowers would be magical, cascading down crystal trees that glowed softly in the evening light. The cake? It would be a showstopper, a galaxy-themed masterpiece that would take everyone's breath away. The venue would be transformed into an ethereal wonderland, a place that felt as though it had stepped out of a dream. No expense would be spared. This wasn't just about the wedding. This was about showing my parents that I had a life of my own, that I didn't need them to be happy. This was about proving to myself that I was worthy of love and attention, that I could create my own perfect moments without anyone's approval. The more I threw myself into the planning, the more I felt alive. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about what anyone else wanted. I wasn't thinking about Lily's graduation, about my parents' expectations, about what would make everyone else happy. I was thinking about me. I was thinking about my happiness, my dreams, my moment. Daniel supported me every step of the way, even as the plans became more elaborate. He didn't question me when I told him how grand it would be. He didn't try to talk me out of it. Instead, he stood by me, reminding me that this was my day, my choice, and that I deserved it. As the days went by, I could feel the excitement building. This was it. This was my chance to finally take the spotlight, to show my family that I was capable of creating something beautiful, something unforgettable. I was going to make them regret not coming, and I was going to do it with every ounce of creativity I had. When I sent the invitations to my parents, I made sure they had to sign for them. I needed them to make a conscious decision to reject me. I needed them to know that they were choosing Lily's graduation over my wedding, and that this choice would have consequences. When the RSVP came back, signed by my mother, I filed it away. It was proof of their decision, proof that they had once again chosen her over me. The more I worked on the wedding, the more determined I became. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my power. It was about saying, I am here and I matter. For so long, I had been living in the shadows, accepting that I was always the second choice, always the one who gave way. But not anymore. This time, I was going to make sure my moment was bigger than anything they could ever imagine. As the day of the wedding drew closer, I felt a mix of anticipation and excitement. I knew it would be perfect. I had put everything I had into this day, and nothing was going to stop me from making it the most unforgettable celebration of my life. The flowers would be breathtaking, the cake would be a work of art, and the guests would be in awe of the beauty and the magic that surrounded them. But most of all, I was excited because this was my moment. And it would be a moment that no one, not even my family, could take away from me. The day of my wedding arrived with a clarity I had never felt before. I had always imagined it would be perfect. Every detail falling into place with the precision of a well-planned event, every moment captured in time as though it were meant to be. But there was something different about today. It wasn't just the grandeur of the flowers or the intricacy of the cake or the spectacular lighting design. It wasn't even the stunning dress I was wearing, which shimmered under the sunlight, or the soft glow that the crystal trees cast across the garden. No, what made this day perfect was that it was mine. For the first time in my life, everything was about me. And it felt incredible. As I stood in the bridal suite, my heart pounded in anticipation. I looked at myself in the mirror, taking in the sight of my carefully crafted gown, the delicate lace veil that trailed behind me like a cloud. For a brief moment, I could almost hear the echo of my mother's voice telling me that I wasn't important enough to be chosen. But today, none of that mattered. Today, I was the center of my own story, and the world could see me as I truly was. The garden outside was a vision. It had been transformed into something that felt ethereal, almost magical. The cherry blossom trees, wrapped in crystal, shimmered with every movement of the wind, their branches glowing as the sun began to dip. The path leading to the altar was lined with floating orbs of light that appeared to dance just above the ground, casting a soft glow over the space. Every flower, every detail had been designed with the intention of making the moment unforgettable. Not just for the guests who would witness it, but for me. The ceremony was a reflection of everything I had wanted, everything I had dreamed of, and it was finally here. As I waited for the signal to walk down the aisle, I couldn't help but glance over at the empty seats in the front row. It was almost laughable how striking they were, the way they stood there like a glaring reminder of my family's absence. The seats were meant to be filled by the people who were supposed to be there for me, the ones who had always promised to support me, who had always told me they would be there for the most important moments of my life. But today, those seats were empty. And it wasn't just any empty seats. It was their choice, their decision to prioritize Lily's graduation over my wedding. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel resentment. Instead, I felt something much more powerful. I felt free. I had spent so many years playing the part of the understanding one, the one who never asked for anything, who never stood up for herself. I had quietly accepted the role of being second, of being invisible, simply because it was easier. But today, I wasn't invisible. Today, I had created something spectacular, something that no one could overlook. I had created this moment for me, and I was going to walk into it with my head held high, regardless of who was or wasn't there. Daniel appeared at my side, his arm outstretched to escort me down the aisle. His smile was warm, and his eyes were full of love and pride. He had always been the one to support me, the one who had never let me fade into the background. Today, it was his support that made this day even more meaningful. As we began our walk to the altar, I felt a quiet strength inside me, like the weight of all my past sacrifices and self-doubt was finally being lifted. With every step, I was leaving behind the version of me who had always stayed in the background, the one who had never asked for anything, and walking toward the woman I was finally becoming. the woman who was taking center stage. As we reached the altar, I could see the guests rising to their feet, their gasps of admiration filling the air. But all I could focus on was Daniel, standing there waiting for me. The way his eyes lit up when he saw me, the way he looked at me like I was the most important person in the world. This was the moment I had always wanted. Not the applause of a crowd, not the recognition of a family that had failed to show up for me, but this quiet, powerful moment of connection with the person who had always seen me for who I was. The ceremony itself was everything I had hoped for, and more. The vows were exchanged under an arch of floating candles and cascading flowers, and the air was filled with the sweet scent of roses and jasmine. The lighting design shifted, bathing us in a warm golden glow, as though the very sky above was celebrating our love. The music, played by a string quartet that had learned our favorite song, filled the space with a hauntingly beautiful melody. It was perfect. It was mine. Throughout the ceremony, I couldn't help but think about my parents and the decision they had made. I wondered if they were watching, if they were seeing what they had missed, if they could feel the weight of their absence in the very air around me. The irony wasn't lost on me. They had chosen Lily's graduation over my wedding, and now the world was watching as I created something that would go down in history as one of the most beautiful weddings anyone had ever seen. My mother had always told me that my wedding would be special, but in her mind, it was only special if she was there. Now, she was the one missing out on the moment that was entirely mine, and I wasn't sorry for it. As the ceremony came to an end, I couldn't help but glance again at the empty seats. There they were, just as I had expected. Silent, unmoving. They were like a photograph of their choice, their decision to be absent from my life at this moment. But I wasn't angry. I was at peace. Because I had created something beautiful without them. I had chosen to make my moment perfect, even if they weren't there to witness it. The reception that followed was nothing short of magical. The guests were in awe of the venue, of the intricate details, of the way the lighting shifted to create a sense of wonder. The cake, with its galaxy theme, was an absolute showstopper, with twinkling stars suspended within the layers. Every detail had been meticulously planned, from the hand-painted dance floor to the champagne that had been flown in from France. I couldn't have asked for anything more. This was my day, and everything about it was a testament to the woman I had become. And as the evening wore on, as the music played and the guests danced, I found myself reflecting on what this day meant. It wasn't just about a wedding. It was about reclaiming my place in the world. It was about proving to myself that I didn't need anyone's approval to live my life the way I wanted to. It was about realizing that I was worthy of a moment like this, and that I didn't have to share it with anyone who didn't see that. As the night came to a close, I received a message from Lily. "Mom's been crying," she said. "She regrets not being there. She said it was the biggest mistake of her life." I didn't reply right away. I wasn't interested in their regret. They had made their choice, and now they would have to live with it. The next morning, as Daniel and I prepared to leave for our honeymoon, the magazines were already abuzz with coverage of our wedding. "Wedding of the Century," one headline read. "Event planner's dream wedding sets new standards." The photos were stunning, capturing every breathtaking detail of the day. My family had chosen to miss it, but the world was watching. They were going to see what they had missed, and it would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Later, I would hear from my parents. Apologies, regret, tearful messages left on voicemail. But I wasn't ready to forgive them. Not yet. They had chosen Lily's graduation over my wedding, and now they would have to live with the consequences of their decision. It was their loss, and I had no intention of letting them off the hook so easily. But in the quiet moments when I looked back on that day, I didn't feel anger. I felt peace. I had chosen myself. I had created something beautiful without their approval, without their presence. And that was more than enough. As I stood at the altar, my heart was full. The day had come together perfectly, better than I could have ever imagined. The soft light filtering through the crystal trees, the intricate floral arrangements, the stunning galaxy-themed cake that had taken weeks of planning. All of it was nothing short of a dream come true. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was finally stepping into the life I deserved. The ceremony had been flawless. The guests, all in awe of the beauty of it, couldn't stop commenting on how every detail was picture perfect. I walked down the aisle with Daniel's father at my side, his gentle smile reminding me of how much this moment meant. Not just to me, but to all of us who had made it possible. Daniel stood at the altar, waiting for me with a love that I knew was unconditional, with eyes that saw me for who I truly was. This was my moment, the culmination of everything I had dreamed of. And it was mine alone. But just as I was about to say my vows, a sudden, unexpected phone call shattered the perfect moment. The phone in my pocket buzzed. It was a message. From my mother. My stomach twisted. I took a deep breath, willing myself to focus on the ceremony. But the buzz continued. Then a second message followed. A call from my father. I had no idea why they were reaching out at this moment, but my instinct told me it was something urgent. Something was wrong. Daniel noticed the look on my face as I hesitated before stepping forward. He gently squeezed my hand, his thumb running over my fingers, sensing my distress. Olivia, don't let it get to you. This moment is ours. But my mind wouldn't let go. What could it be? Why now? The tension was thick, and despite Daniel's comforting words, I found myself quietly stepping back. I excused myself briefly, walking away from the altar, my heart racing. I couldn't ignore it. My parents had made their decision. They had stayed away. And yet, they were calling me now. At the very moment I was marrying the love of my life. I took a deep breath and answered the phone. The sound of my mother's voice on the other end immediately filled me with dread. It was shaky, filled with desperation. Olivia, we need to talk. We need you to come to the hospital. It's about your father. A cold chill ran down my spine. My father? I couldn't make sense of it. What was happening? Mom, what happened? I stammered, trying to keep my voice steady. There's been an accident. He's in critical condition. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. The world around me seemed to blur, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. My father, the man who had always been distant, who had chosen Lily over me at every turn, now needed me. And I couldn't be there for him. Not on the one day that was supposed to be about me. I could hear my mother's voice breaking as she pleaded, "Please, Olivia, please come. We need you." I didn't know what to do. My mind was a storm of conflicting emotions, anger, hurt, confusion. But at the core of it all, there was something deeper, something I couldn't ignore. I realized in that moment that no matter what my parents had done to me, they were still my family. They were still the people who had raised me. And despite everything, I couldn't walk away. Mom, I said, my voice shaking but steady. I'll be there. Just tell me where. Daniel was by my side almost immediately. His face was filled with concern, but also an understanding that I had to go. Olivia, do you want me to come with you? He asked, his voice soft and steady. I shook my head. I didn't know what this meant yet. It wasn't about him right now. It was about my father, about my family, and the bitter, complicated relationship we had always shared. I needed to process this alone, to figure out what was happening and to figure out what it meant for me. The drive to the hospital felt like it took forever. My heart was racing as I tried to make sense of what was happening. I could feel the weight of the day slipping away from me. The wedding, my moment, my time to finally be seen. It all felt so distant now. I had thought that today was about me, but now it was about something else. Something I couldn't ignore. When I arrived at the hospital, the reality of the situation hit me like a wave. The sterile smell of the waiting room, the buzz of voices around me, and the endless rows of empty chairs, all of it felt suffocating. I could feel the blood pounding in my ears as I was led through the hallways, toward my father's room. When I finally saw him, lying there in that sterile bed, hooked up to machines, something inside me shifted. It wasn't just the physical toll that the accident had taken on him, it was something deeper. I saw the man who had never once truly seen me for who I was. The man who had overlooked me my entire life. who had chosen my sister over me at every turn, now lying there, vulnerable, helpless. And yet, despite all of it, the years of feeling invisible, the bitterness I had carried for so long, there was a part of me that couldn't walk away. I couldn't turn my back on him, not now. No matter how much he had hurt me, I was still his daughter. And this was still my family, no matter how complicated or painful that connection had been. I sat beside his bed, holding his hand. He wasn't conscious, but I whispered to him anyway. "I'm here, Dad. I'm here. I never stopped caring." Hours passed in that sterile room, and I found myself drifting in and out of a fog. The anger I had felt earlier, the resentment, began to melt away as I faced the man I had always hoped would love me unconditionally. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was about showing up, about being there for him in a way that he had never been there for me. Maybe it was foolish. Maybe it was naive. But it was all I could do. When I finally stepped out of the hospital room, it was late. My mind was numb, my heart heavy. The wedding felt like it had happened in another lifetime. It was as though that moment had slipped away, replaced by the weight of what was happening now. I knew my family had made their choice. They had missed my wedding, but now they were facing something much more important. They needed me in a way they never had before. I drove home slowly, the weight of everything pressing down on me. Daniel was waiting for me when I got back to the apartment. He didn't ask questions, didn't press me for answers. He just pulled me into his arms, holding me close. I didn't need to say anything. He knew. He always knew. I thought about the wedding, about the moment that had been so perfect. How it had been about me, about finally being seen. But now I wondered if that moment was enough. If all of this, the grand wedding, the perfect day, had been enough to make me feel complete, or if what truly mattered was this moment, this unexpected twist in the story. Was it about showing the world what I could create, or was it about showing up for those who mattered, even when they had failed me? As I lay in bed later that night, I realized something important. Sometimes life throws the most unexpected curveballs. The moments we think are the most important can shift in an instant, and we find ourselves having to choose between holding on to the past or embracing what's in front of us. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew this. No matter what, I would never let go of the person I had become. I had created a perfect moment for myself. But maybe, just maybe, the most perfect moments are the ones we never see coming. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to subscribe to my channel for more content like this. Your support helps me create more inspiring stories for you. Keep watching for more unexpected twists and life-changing moments in future videos.